Hey everybody, it's Chris and I'm back with another practical build. So there are a few things about the 2024 rules that are kind of a common understanding at this point. The first thing I'll mention is that we understand that ranged combat in the 2014 rules was generally superior to melee combat, and that took a big reversal in 2024. Melee combat just does a lot more damage now than ranged combat. At least there's more ways to do more damage with melee, and a lot of ways that you could do a lot of damage with ranged combat got cut. So it's a lot harder to make a good ranged character. Another thing we know about the 2024 rules is that most classes got really big boosts, including to damage. One of those classes that didn't get a big boost to damage was the rogue. They got a little bit of a boost to damage because of weapon mastery, but in general, their sneak attack didn't really improve in terms of damage. A little bit in versatility, but you actually have to sacrifice damage for that. And the other thing we know is the Ranger. The Ranger didn't really see an improvement and potentially nerfing, depending how you look at it. But the Ranger, particularly in Tier 3, really kind of falls off a cliff in terms of damage. In Tier 2, they hold on, but they definitely lose compared to Tier 1. They're a strong Tier 1 class, an okay Tier 2 class, and not great Tier 3 class. So what I wanted to do is test it. What if I make a ranged Ranger Rogue? How good can that be? And I made the best one I could. So let me introduce Rorik, the Ranged Ranger Rogue. So I'm just going to go over the build first. This was level 13, but I'm going to do this build from level 1 through level 13, show you the math all the way through. So here is Rorik's character sheet, the actual one I used on D&D Beyond. And the first thing we'll take a look at is his initiative. So it's plus 12 with advantage. So pretty good for level 13 or any level. I didn't really focus on saving throws here. You can see the saving throws are fine, but they're not fantastic. And look at the skills. All right, so by the way, Dwarf, Rogue 8, Ranger 5. And here are the skills. And if we look at all of these skills here, we're going to have acrobatics plus 10, athletics plus 12, investigation plus 9, perception plus 12, sleight of hand plus 10, stealth plus 15, survival plus 12, and this character has reliable talent. That means that the minimum I could roll on any of those skills, investigation plus 9, minimum I could roll on any of those skills is investigation. That would be a 19 minimum. Okay. And then I'm going to just move this over here. Max hit points, 127. We can see that at the end of the one shot, I didn't have 127 hit points anymore, but 127 at level 13 is good hit points. Armor class 17 is not great, but I'm playing a ranged character, and I was using a longbow plus 1. Now, the math I'm going to be doing is for a longbow plus 0, but the longbow plus 1 is what this character actually had. Another thing I want to point out is if you look under the saving throws, you're going to see passive perception 22, pretty good. Passive investigation 19, also pretty good. Passive insight 12, not so great. And then dark vision 180 feet. And that is because I was mixing the Gloomstalker Ranger, which gives you an additional 60 feet of dark vision range, with Dwarf that gets a base 120 feet. And I want to explain why that's good. If you are a ranged character and it's dark, then you will be facing creatures that have dark vision or true sight or blind sight that can see you. But true sight, blind sight, and dark vision are pretty much always capped at 120 feet. So if you have a longbow, which has a short range of 150 feet, and you have dark vision out to 180 feet, then anywhere between 125 feet and 150 feet is your sweet spot where you do not have disadvantage. Your enemy has disadvantage because they can't see you, you can see them, and therefore you will always get advantage on your attacks, and they'll get disadvantage on their attacks against you. Now, this is a Gloomstalker, so they're invisible to dark vision anyways, but they're not invisible to true sight, and they're not invisible to blind sight. And as you go up in level, those creatures become more and more common. In a 13th level one-shot, I would expect to fight creatures that have blind sight and true sight, but it does not help them when I have the 180-foot dark vision combined with a 150-foot weapon. So I'm going to show how the characters put together, and I'm going to go through the math level by level, and then I'm going to show you on a graph. So we have Rorik, ranged rogue ranger. Background is a criminal. Dexterity +2, Constitution +1, origin feat alert, and the starting skills of stealth and sleight of hand. You can do custom if you want, but this is exactly what we wanted. Species is dwarf, base dark vision 120 feet. We get dwarven resilience, which gives us poison resistance and advantage on saves versus being poisoned or ending the poison condition. Dwarven toughness gives us +1 hit point per level. That's why our hit points were pretty good. And stone cunning gives us tremor sense 60 feet as a bonus action, and it lasts for 10 minutes, and we can use that proficiency bonus times per long rest. And our starting ability scores, here they are. So we're going to start with a strength of 13, dexterity 17, constitution 14, intelligence 9, wisdom 14, and charisma 8. This is with a point buy. All right, and moving on from there, our first level is going to be in rogue. So we're going to take investigation, athletics, acrobatics, and perception as starting skills. Those are on top of the stealth and sleight of hand. We're going to take expertise in perception and investigation. The reason why I do expertise in those is because they're not dexterity based, and my wisdom and intelligence that these are based on are lower, right? So I'm kind of offsetting the lower base value because I'm going to have reliable talent. And so the skills that are based on dexterity are going to do great, all on their own. But perception and investigation could use that little hand up, and then it doesn't hurt so much that we didn't focus as much on those ability scores. Sneak attack will be a D6. We get Thieves' Cant. Weapon mastery, I'm going to start with weapon mastery in short bow, and short sword in case I get stuck in melee. Short bow and short sword both have the Vex properties. That says that if you hit with an attack, your next attack against that target has advantage. And so what I assume is, and there's some math based on this, but I'm just going to tell you what the result is. 72% chance to hit based on an initial 60% chance to hit, but Vex ups it to 72%, 7% chance to crit. So the math is right there on the screen, 7.7 DPR. Then we move into Ranger, and I should mention why we don't go Ranger first. The reason we don't go Ranger first is by going Rogue first, we start with 4 skills, and then when we multiclass into Ranger, we get a 5th skill. If we went Ranger first, we would start with 3 skills, and then when we multiclass into Rogue, we would get a 4th skill. So we're going to get 1 fewer skill if we do Ranger first. However, we do lose a hit point, and we won't have extra attack at level 5. We won't get it to level 6. So there are some costs to going Ranger or Rogue first, but I figured for this character it was better overall to get the Rogue first and get that extra skill because we were playing at level 13. But if you were playing this level by level and you really didn't want to have the lower damage at level 5, you'd want to do Ranger for the first 5 levels and then switch to Rogue. Okay? And here's level 2, Rogue 1, Ranger 1. So we can add an additional skill. We'll add Survival. And then we get our spells. We get Hunter's Mark for free. And then we're going to add Cure Wounds and Hail of Thorns. And we have 2 spell slots to use it. And we have 2 free castings of Hunter's Mark. And this character uses Hunter's Mark. What are we concentrating on? Hunter's Mark. Almost all the time. Weapon mastery in longbow and dagger. As I said, this character starts with a short bow, but we're going to switch to a longbow. At level 2, I want to have both. So I want to use short bow if I'm in short range, and if I'm in longer range, I use the longbow. I did DPR for both just to show that short bow still does more damage, but the difference isn't a lot. So we have the DPR for the longbow ends up being 9.3, and the DPR for the short bow is 10.5. Okay, and then we move on to level 3, and we get our second level in Ranger. We get Deft Explorer, so I took expertise in survival. Our fighting style is archery. That gives us a +2 to hit with all ranged weapons. So our base 60% chance to hit becomes 70% chance to hit, plus any modifications from Vex for shortbow. That's why shortbow, by the way, does more damage than longbow. And so spells, I added Longstrider, though we don't get any additional spell slots at this level. And the DPR for longbow is 10.7. The DPR for shortbow is 11.7. And the reason why, we would use longbow sometimes is range. The other reason why we might want to use longbow is if we're going to get some value out of the slow property. Because if we hit with a longbow, their speed is reduced by 10 feet. We're only giving up 1 point of damage for that benefit. So it's still worthwhile to use the longbow. But if we just want to focus on damage and we're in range, shortbow is better. Ranger 3, we're going to add the subclass of Gloomstalker. We get Dread Ambusher, and it's based on our wisdom, so we can use it twice. Dread Ambusher allows us, after we hit with an attack, we can add 2d6 psychic damage. And this does not use a bonus action like a smite spell or Hail of Thorns or anything like that. So we can try to hold it off for crits, right? If we crit, we definitely want to use our Dread Ambusher. Otherwise, just use it as a bit of a damage boost. We're going to add in Disguise Self, which we're going to get for free through Gloomstalker, and Jump. And we have 3 spell slots. We gain Umbral Sight. This gives us our dark vision of 180 feet, right? It's 60 feet of dark vision, or if you already have dark vision, you add 60 feet. And it makes us invisible to dark vision. And so that means that a lot of times we might have advantage without Vex, without using the short bow, any of that stuff, just because we happen to be in darkness and the enemy is using dark vision. Then we're going to have advantage to hit. They're going to have disadvantage to hit us. So I actually did DPR with a number of different scenarios here. So DPR with a longbow normally is going to be 11.1. DPR with a short bow normally is going to be 12.1. If we are taking advantage of Umbral Sight, then we would definitely use the longbow, and it would be 15. Now, we're going to graph damage later, and I'm not going to assume that we're getting that. I'm going to assume we're not getting that, okay? Then we're going to go to level 5, Rogue 1, Ranger 4. We're going to get our first ability score improvement. And we are going to pick up Mage Slayer. Always pick up Mage Slayer if you can. Mage Slayer is the best feat in the game. And we can increase our dexterity with Mage Slayer, so we'll increase our dexterity to 18. We're going to pick up the Goodberry spell. We're going to see the DPRs here. 12.2 for the longbow, 13.6 for the short bow. If we can take advantage of Umbral Sight, 16.4. Okay? And then level 6, we are going to be Rogue 1 Ranger 5. This will be the last level in Ranger we take. Level 5 is an obvious breakpoint for Ranger. We're going to get extra attack. Spells, we're going to get second level spells now. So we're going to have 4 first level slots, 2 second level slots. We're going to get Rope Trick through Gloomstalker. We're going to get Pass Without Trace, replacing Goodberry. We're going to get Spike Growth, replacing Jump. Just remember that the Ranger, you can change your spells with a long rest if you want to. And our DPRs with the longbow is 22.1, shortbow is 25.3, and longbow, if we have the invisibility, 27.8. And level 7, we're going to get Cunning Action through Rogue, Rogue 2, Ranger 5, no change in our DPR. That's the only level, by the way, that our DPR doesn't go up. Then level 8, we're going to get Rogue 3, and we're Ranger 5. Sneak attack is now 2d6 We get our subclass. We're picking Assassin. We get Steady Aim. We get Assassinate. That's going to give us +3 damage if we're doing sneak attack on round 1. And we're also going to have advantage on our attacks on the first round against enemies that haven't taken a turn yet. If you recall, this character had a +12 initiative with advantage. They're going to be going first. And we're going to get advantage on initiative. And our sources of advantage. So on round 1, when we win initiative, we will have advantage on attacks. We can get advantage through cunning action. When our bonus action is not spoken for, though that's only on one attack. Umbral Sight might give us advantage. If we are out of the range of the enemy's Dark Vision, True Sight, or Blind Sight, we'll have advantage. So I assumed that we would have advantage 60% of the time with attacks with a longbow, and 84% of the time with a short bow because of Vex. And our base to hit reduces here to 65. It was at 75 because of the archery fighting style. Goes down to 65 because we hit level 8 and we didn't increase our dexterity. And so we didn't increase our chance to hit. So monsters' armor classes are going up. Our bonus to hit didn't go up. That's why it goes down on the numbers and on the graph later on. So our DPR with a longbow, attacks without advantage do 16.4. Attacks with advantage do 22.7. So based on the 60-40 split, that's 20.2. And then we add our sneak attack, our dread ambusher, and our assassinate, and we're up to 29.4. If we use a short bow, it is 30.8. Still only a difference of 1 and a bit between the two. So like I said, longbow and short bow, damage is very similar, but short bow does that much more damage at this point if we're in short bow range and we don't care about slow. Then we have level 9, Rogue 4, Ranger 5. Time to take a short bow and throw it in the garbage. Because this is what's going to happen. So we're going to get our assassinate damage goes to 4. Our ability score improvement, we're going to get Great Weapon Master. That gives us +4 damage with heavy weapons using our attack action. And so I'm going to bring that up on screen. So I've pulled it up on D&D Beyond here. This is right from the 2024 Player's Handbook. General feat, prerequisite level 4+, strength 13+. That's why we have a 13 strength to start. You gain the following benefits. Ability score increase your strength score by 1 to a maximum of 20. So our strength will go from 13 to 14. Heavy weapon mastery. When you hit a creature with a weapon that has the heavy property as part of the attack action on your turn, you can cause the weapon to deal extra damage to the target. The extra damage equals your proficiency bonus. Notice it doesn't say melee attack or melee weapon. It just says a weapon with the heavy property. So what has the heavy property? Longbows have the heavy property. By the way, heavy crossbows also have the heavy property, but we would need Crossbow Expert to bypass the loading property on those. I want Mage Slayer. I'll take the longbow. So that is why we get our proficiency bonus as an addition to our damage with our attack action. And our attack action is the only time we're attacking. We're not making reaction attacks. What opportunity attack are you making with a longbow? And we're not making bonus action attacks. Our bonus actions are called for. We're using Hunter's Mark. We're using Cunning Action. We're using Steady Aim. We never have a bonus action free to do any kind of weapon attack with it. So Great Weapon Master is going to apply to all our attacks. And at level 9, when we pick this up, our proficiency bonus just got to +4. So that's +4 damage to every attack we make. So Great Weapon Master is an obvious pick, actually, if you want to make a ranged character, because there's so few ways to boost your damage in range that it's just hard not to take something that's going to give you +4 damage with every attack. And I should mention that if you are using a True Strike build, and you want to use True Strike, you can't use Great Weapon Master with True Strike because that's not the attack action, unless you are a Valor Bard or an Eldritch Knight, or a Blade Singer wizard. So you can't use Great Weapon Master with True Strike. True Strike would give you an extra D6 damage. That is less than Great Weapon Master. Okay, so this is more damage than True Strike would give us if we were doing it with every attack. Our DPR with the longbow, here's the numbers. Attacks without advantage, attacks with advantage, add them together, 60-40 split, 26.5. Add our sneak attack, our dread ambusher, and assassinate. We're up to 35.9 at level 9. There, that's all the math on the screen. All right, on to level 10. So we are now 5 and 5, even split. Assassinate 5, sneak attack 3d6. Uncanny dodge is added, so we're having more uses for our reaction now. Attacks without advantage, with advantage. Then add all our sneak attack, dread ambusher, assassinate, and we are at 39.8 DPR. All the math is right there. Level 11, rogue 6, our assassinate goes up. We're going to get expertise in 2 skills. I grab stealth and athletics, but take your pick, right? And we're up to 40 DPR, and there's the math. Then level 12, rogue 7, ranger 5, assassinate goes up to 7, sneak attack goes up to 46. We now have evasion. We've improved our defenses. We now have reliable talent. So we are excellent at skills. We have improved defenses, and we're doing good damage. 44 DPR at level 12. And level 13. So this is the apex of this build, but I can tell you pretty easily what I would do if I was going to continue this character to higher levels. Assassinate 8. Great Weapon Master goes up to +5 at this level. Ability score improvement. Dexterity +2 gets me to Dexterity 20. Attacks without advantage. With advantage. Total 46.7 DPR at level 13. If I was to take this character to level 20, what I would do is just keep putting on Rogue, right? You just keep going Rogue till we're 15 levels Rogue, 5 levels Ranger. And that's what you do. And you'll see the trend on the DPR graph. I would assume that trend will just continue straight on to level 20. All right, so I have a baseline damage. Baseline damage is based on a Warlock that uses a Greatsword and Pact of the Blade. They take Thirsting Blade, Devouring Blade, Life Drinker, all that stuff. And that is represented by the blue line here. So levels are across the bottom, damage is across the left side. The red line is this build, plotted against it. And I'm going to go in tier by tier and show you the difference. So here's tier 1, and we can see this build beats the baseline, all 4 levels, no problem. So damage is decent in tier 1, and it usually is. Rogues do pretty good in tier 1, Rangers do pretty good in tier 1. Ranged isn't the best in tier 1, but good enough to beat the baseline for sure. So let's look at tier 2. And now tier 2 is when Rangers see a drop and Rogues see a drop as well. So let's take a look. All right, so the red line is Rorick, the blue line is the baseline. And what I'm going to point out here is level 5, we are behind the baseline, quite a bit behind the baseline, and that is because we do not have extra attack. If you don't want to see this, if level 5 is important to you, don't dip Rogue at level 1. Just go Ranger, and then we'll be beating the baseline by that much. All right, I can tell you because I've done Ranger DPR damage before. If you're using a bow and you're at level 5, that much you'll beat DPR by, or baseline by at level 5. So you can. And then go Rogue after that, and it will end up in the same place. But I wanted the skills. I'm greedy, so I am going to take the sacrifice at level 5. Level 6, you can see it jumps right back up. And now we're well above the baseline, or at least comfortably above the baseline. Level 7, we held even. Remember, we didn't gain any DPR at level 7, but we're still above the baseline. Then level 8, we're kind of taking off. And level 9, we're kind of taking off. And then we get to level 10 and kind of taking off. You'll notice kind of a trend there. It's just a flat line going far more steeply than the baseline is. And here's where we finish off. 11, 12, 13, still building up faster than the baseline, though there's definitely a narrowing at 12 because that's where the Warlock gets that third attack. But nevertheless, you can see still a comfortable gap between the two. So this character does not have tier 3 problems. It does not have tier 2 problems. And does not have tier 1 problems. Ranged, Rogue, Ranger. So yeah, if you do not want to do good damage in 2024 D&D, don't play ranged, don't play rogue, don't play ranger, unless you put them together, because then for some reason it seems to work. It seems to take the parts where the ranger doesn't do well, the parts where the rogue doesn't do well, and they just kind of fill each other's gaps. That sounds really dirty, but they do. It ends up being a pretty good DPR. Here is Rorik versus a ranged rogue using True Strike. And we can see that the ranged rogue outdamages Rorik at levels 3, 4, and 5. But it falls behind at all other levels. And here is Rorik against the ranger trying to use a longbow. Look at the difference from level 6 on here. It just gets worse and worse and worse. The ranger with the longbow can do okay, but by level 6, then it's fallen completely behind. And there's almost no build, right? Like if you see the blue line, there's a big jump at level 5. And then between level 5 and 13, it's not that much different. That's a very, very shallow slope. So we've taken care of that entirely. So what about against melee builds, right? It's one thing to say we do more damage than range builds, but how do we do versus melee builds? Well, here's how we do. So at level 13... I just took a bunch of builds here, some of them range, some of them melee. So Warlock Archfey using Eldritch Blast does 35.6 DPR at 13. Ranger Beastmaster using a longbow does 36.7. Warlock Blade Pack Baseline 38.5. Fighter with 1 level, Rogue 12 levels, Assassin with Heavy Crossbow with True Strike 40.7. That's the most damage I was able to do at range with a weapon in my baseline builds because I was doing almost all one class, so I wasn't able to do things like I did with Rorik. Draconic Sorcerer Blast build, 43.1. That was the most range damage I was able to do in that series. And then Rorik at 46.7. So he is out damaging all the baseline range builds I was able to do. A Zealot with a Greatsword does 48.2. So that is melee, and it outdamages Rorik by 1.5. So it's very, very close. An Eldritch Knight with a Greatsword at level 13, 50. So 3.3 difference. Oath of Vengeance with a Greatsword, Oath of Vengeance Paladin, 52.5. So a difference of about 6. And the Berserker with the Greatsword is the highest damage of any build I did, 57. Well, that's 10. That's a lot. And so, yes, you can still do more damage with melee if you take the right classes and so on and so forth. But Rorik's right in there with most of them. So I was pretty happy with where the DPR ended up, and I wasn't planning to do a build video for this character. But I played the character in a one-shot, and I was doing a lot of damage. And I was talking with the other players, and we kind of talked and said, you know, I should really do a build video for this character. And so this character actually kind of inspired the idea of doing practical builds. So that's Rorik, the ranged rogue ranger. Hope you enjoyed it. Otherwise, until next time, I'm going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon.